Hi, my name is Clint Francis. I'm a sales and mindset coach. Today I want to talk about criticism, what to do with that. There's a whole bunch of different types of criticism, but a lot of criticism today people experience on social media, in comments, or mostly in the comments. If you have a social media account, people can be very critical. And it's hard to know whether what they're telling you is true, because we usually get emotional when people criticize us. We usually get upset. So the first thing you have to do is watch if you get upset and just observe yourself and see if that's true. If you get upset with criticism, it can confuse you, because sometimes we get mad at people for criticizing us, and whether they're right or wrong, we usually get lost emotionally because the resentment towards that person spins us out of our common sense and our rationality. So when someone leaves, let's say, bad comments on your social media accounts, I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that. If you see repeated criticisms on your content, there may be some truth to that. And take that criticism to someone that you know, love, and trust, and know that they love and trust you, because they'll watch the video and say, yeah, you were a little arrogant, or whatever people were accusing you in the video. But once again, it's not always true. Sometimes the majority criticism is still not true. So it's really tricky to deal with. But I think the criticisms we have the hardest time with, not so much the social media comments, but when people we like, people we love criticize us. A lot of times what happens when people criticize you in person, that are standing right in front of you, for example, a lot of times they're projecting onto you. Their criticism of you is their criticism of themselves. But we tend to immediately react emotionally in a negative way, with a negative emotion. But if we could take a few seconds before we respond, or even take in what they say, and ask yourself, is this really true? And if you don't know, you can say to yourself, well, I'll sit with it and see if it really rings true with me over time. You don't need to know right away if a criticism is valid or not. But much of the time, even well-intentioned people project their emotional stuff onto you and their personality traits onto you. And the personality traits are difficult to pull back as far as projections concerned, but emotional projections are extremely difficult to correct. So a lot of times we feel upset, and that really stems from when we were young. We had to learn to get along with our caretakers, and if you didn't get along with them, you could be possibly left and not survive. So there's a real strong emotional survival mechanism in us to want to have some kind of agreement or want people to like us. It's just part of life. But as you mature and grow older, or maybe wiser, you start to figure out that maybe not everybody knows you, and maybe you don't even know yourself. It's really good to get to know yourself and observe yourself and see how you really are, as opposed to how you think you are, or what other people have told you you are throughout the years, whether they're friends or family, well-meaning as they may be. A lot of times they don't know you because they don't know themselves. In the business I'm in, coaching, I always ask people what they really want. And a lot of times they don't know. I would say most people I talk to, whether it's on a day-to-day basis or clients, don't really know what they want initially. And that's very normal, and that's fine. So I think the first thing to do is find out what you really want. And if someone's questioning you or criticizing you and you don't know what you want, maybe they're right. Maybe they do see something, and it could be true. But when you bring that emotional reaction into it, it just really gives you a hard time to be clear about what criticism is true and what is not. I mean, if you're starting a newspaper today, it's probably not a good idea. And if people tell you it's a bad idea, they're probably not just criticizing you, because newspapers are going out and people are getting their internet or their news on the internet, social media, etc. So there are valid criticisms where people are actually trying to help you. And sometimes we get really defensive and we don't want to hear it. So ultimately, what I would say is, when someone criticizes you, you have to ask yourself, is that really true? And if you're honest with yourself and you know yourself, you'll know it's not true if it's not true, and you can just let them have their opinion. If you need to correct them, you do, but most of the time, people have a lot of opinions or criticisms about you. It doesn't really matter. There's not much to deal with there, or really much that you have to do. So the bottom line is, when people criticize you, the way you can deal with that is just ask yourself if that's true and sit with it. And you may not get an immediate answer, and you don't need an immediate answer. I would say trust people who you have a good relationship with and that you can trust and that love you and care about you, because a lot of times they're just trying to help you out. But sometimes they're projecting too. So you have to really learn how to discern this. And the way to do that is through practice. You have to practice of getting to know yourself, knowing your own motivations. And if people criticize you, especially with emotional, like a negative emotional feel to it, to not take that in. And that's a whole nother subject of not letting people control you emotionally, which, maybe I'll talk about in the future. But just for now, with criticism, whenever you get on social media, you're going to get negative comments. You're going to get people that hate your content or hate you. You're going to get people in your life that are jealous of you and don't like you. So you have to really know yourself. And then when people criticize you, you can just ask yourself if that's true. And it may take you a day or two, or maybe even a week or a couple of hours to know whether it's really true or not. And if you ask a person you really trust, we always usually have one person that we really, really trust. And if we go and we say, hey, am I being arrogant all the time? And then they say, yeah, you tend to be more arrogant. Then you can decide what you're going to do with that, whether you're going to keep that or you're going to tone it down or whatever you're going to do. So just remember, most criticism is projection of the other person. That's really all it is, pure autobiography. If this was helpful, like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, put them down below. If you'd like to work with me as a business coach or a mindset coach, sales coach, etc., my contact information will be in the show notes. You can follow me on Twitter and YouTube. Have a great day.